somebody was like, why did you have your baby with you the entire time? Like, why didn't you send the baby down to the nursery so mom could get an hour of sleep? And I was like, Breakfast Club PT, we're missing Jimmy McKay today, but I'm sure he'll be back soon. But that's okay. I don't know if you saw it, Dave. I put in the Facebook group that you had big news, and then I said, well, not big. I'm guessing probably between 5 and 10 pounds big. So share the news.
Yes, my wife and I, Annie, we had our first child, David Michael Kittle Jr., and he's healthy and well. She's doing well. We're in the first week and a half of, the new lifestyle of overnights and all that type of stuff. But listen, Tony's got four boys. I didn't even know you had four, by the way. But he's been through this, four times. So it's nothing out of the ordinary, but I appreciate you asking. But yeah, all is well. And also in the content Google Doc that we have for potential topics, I have a host of stories from
Yeah.
the hospital and healthcare, navigating the healthcare system. So whether we talk about it today or maybe we wait until Jimmy's here at another time and we can kind of go through some of those stories. I have so many perspectives, observations, and things like that from just that recent experience going, into the hospital and that whole thing. So I would love to kind of talk about it.
That's what we need to talk about because I think it's fresh in your mind.
Okay.
I think it's applicable to the audience. So let's just start going through it. You lead it. What was one of the most impactful parts of that experience?
Even though so my wife is also a physical therapist, even though we're both healthcare providers, there were still challenges, communication gaps. You have to push as a patient, as a spouse, support staff, family member, whatever. You have to push for things to either be followed up on, checked on, delivered. You're waiting for something, and you have to follow up a lot. Like ask multiple nurses and multiple, techs and things like that, or even the OBs and the physicians or residents. Even though there's a medical record that's centralized with communication about what's happening and all that, or what's being administered and what's being followed up on. It is wild, Tony, how much that we had to follow up, or I specifically had to follow up on things. Also, the meals, that's a whole other conversation. We're going to get to the meals, the menu, the food at the hospital, but just specifically following up on, like, for example, on the last day, blood pressure was a little bit high, then it started to come down. And we needed to kind of follow up on like, hey, so like here's the level of her blood pressure. Can we potentially be discharged today? Or is it so high that we need to be held overnight? And we're just we want our expectations to be managed. Just like I want to manage our expectations of our physical therapy patients and clients. I just assume, I made a big assumption that a hospital and multiple cogs in the system can manage my expectations the same way that we do in our, concierge boutique practice. So we would have to like follow up over like, okay, so like, what are we waiting for? Are you waiting to speak to a resident, or are you waiting for the resident to speak to the OB? Or are we waiting for the OB to call us, or the OB to visit us in the room? Or is it the resident? Like, and maybe I was being a pain in the butt, but like, we want to follow up. And here's the thing, if we're not healthcare providers, if we're not as savvy as we are, I don't know how people navigate our healthcare system, especially in the hospital. Even more so if someone's solo, if a woman out there has ever given birth without a support person, a partner, a spouse, whatever, that is like the biggest feat ever, because I feel like I was, husband, manager, CEO of the weekend or of the delivery. Maybe not CEO, I guess COO maybe would be better. But anyway, following up, I don't know if you've had any experiences like that. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. I mean, we talk about being your own patient advocate. We talk about all of these things. Let me ask you, just for context, have you or your wife ever worked in a hospital system in acute care or any of those departments?
I had one rotation in South Jersey. It
Yeah.
was 8 weeks, so 2 months in duration. I knew I didn't want to work there in probably the first day or two, but that's the great thing about rotations is sometimes your assumptions on that could be changed or
Right.
altered over 4 to 8 weeks or something like that, or if the rotation is longer. We had our program at University of the Sciences, our DPT program was 3 rotations of 8 weeks long, and then the last one was 16 weeks. So by that point, it was like, you better pick a setting that you like for the 16-week rotation, because that's probably how you're like what you're going to move into. But
Right.
it was still good to do that rotation. But that definitely helped me kind of like knowing how things navigate, how there's so many different chefs in the kitchen in terms of like care coordination, and also how things fall through the cracks.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a huge opportunity. We'll talk about it in a minute. But between any of our childbirths, between having sick parents in the hospital on my side, on my wife's side, you and I know a little more than the average person. But even with our background, our knowledge, the system itself just puts you in such a powerless position. You're waiting and waiting, and you don't know what you're waiting for, and you don't know who to ask, and you don't know who to talk to. And the part that I always think about on the flip side is these healthcare professionals, the doctors, the nurses, everybody that's there, they can't be as invested as you and I and we are in our patient care, patient outcomes, because it's a revolving door. It's a constant stream, in your case, of women giving birth every single day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like, it never stops. If you got that invested, you would be destroyed. You would just be burnt out. So they're doing their job. And I always think about me as the patient. You get frustrated because you're like, I don't know. What am I supposed to do? Who do I talk to? What questions do I ask? Where do I go with this? You ring the bell and nobody comes. Like, you deal with all that frustration on the patient side. But then I try to remind myself, these are human beings on the other side. They have their own families. They have their own ambitions, their own desires. They're not robots. They're not machines. And no matter how much they're getting paid, which is never enough, they cannot handle me plus 50 more versions of me every single day of the year. So I'm trying to balance like giving them the space they need to do their job while still trying to manage the care for the person that's laying in the bed, while, being a good advocate, while being supportive, and all of these things. I mean, it's a horrible, horrible, horrible system, but what's the alternative? Like, everybody can't have their own personal doctor, personal nurse, personal everything. We need to just kind of go with the system a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let me ask you, I'm guessing based on some of the communications we've had, you spent the night, you were there. Tell me about that. How was that for you? What was your setup? Real quick, for context, when I was there, I had that little vinyl chair that turned into a recliner. That's where I slept every night. I was there until we were discharged. Now, my wife had a C-section with every birth we had. So we were there for a couple days, I think. I don't even remember. It's a blur. But what was your setup?
So before the setup, a week or two before my wife went into labor, we did a tour at the hospital, which was also very beneficial to kind of see, what does a labor and delivery room look like? We're going to be there for, it turned out to be 6 hours of pushing, which is incredible, like more than a marathon. It was great to see that type of room, to kind of see like, all right, what's the space? Like, we're going to bring bags in and whatever, like different stuff. We also got to see some of the shared rooms. So after a woman gives birth, there's like a ton of shared rooms, meaning it's your wife and like some other stranger, right? And we found out there were 7 private rooms, Tony. Now, my style of boutique and concierge and out of pocket. Sure. So, we inquired, and the private rooms, so meaning a little bit larger space or just not a second patient in there, was $525 a night.
Okay.
That's basically like,
I imagine that's a hotel room in New York. Like,
exactly. So, the stay now for a standard vaginal delivery is 2 overnights, as long as there's no, issues or whatever. So we were looking at, a little over $1,000 for the 2 nights. And I was thinking, yeah, why not? Let's do it, because I want my wife, Annie, to sleep. I want to sleep. I also don't want to hear some other patient like moaning or groaning or whatever, or who knows, like their family making noise and at whatever hours. And
yeah,
both patients would be on different schedules potentially, whatever. So The 525 a night, first of all, was an absolute no-brainer. After the first night or two, I said to my wife, I would have paid 1,000 a night just
Right.
for the privacy. We get to
Did you
close.
have a bed?
So great question. It was like a big seat that pulled out a couple pulls, and it went all the way flat. Now, for me, sleep is vitally important, and I usually sleep prone. Now, the chair you described, I don't think you can sleep prone on a lazy boy because it still has
Right.
a little bit of an upward curve, right?
Right. Right.
The other shared rooms had those chairs.
Yeah.
Just that alone makes it a no-brainer for me for 525 a night, let alone the privacy and the extra sleep and whatever. So now my wife was discharged. It's Easter Sunday. The next day, a little bit higher blood pressure, had to be readmitted. She's readmitted. Hey, I'm going right back to the registrar, the administration, the admin office, and I'm saying, hey, my wife's about to be readmitted. You got any private rooms? And they go, we actually have one open. I'm like, I'll take it. It was the ssame room, Tony. I'm like, hey, maybe this is a sign. We're going right back to the same room. She had to be held another night. So we spent 4 nights. So it was two, then one night home, and then two more. So right there, we spent a little over $2,000 for those 4 nights. Easy peasy, like completely worth it.
Yeah.
In terms of just solace and comfort and all that. So it was absolutely a no-brainer.
Now, what's interesting, and I don't know your area, obviously, but here in Ohio, so we were at three different hospitals. I say three births because one of them was twins. Every single one of them, we had a private room. It wasn't even a question. It was just part of the stay. Like there were no shared rooms for any of the women giving labor. So that was nice. And most of these hospitals had upgraded recently. They were like beautiful paneling and beautiful decor. And I mean, you really felt like you were staying in a beautiful hotel. So that was interesting, but like anything, babies moving around, you're a new parent, you have no idea what to expect. I had never changed a diaper in my life. I didn't know what to do. So as nice as it was, there wasn't a whole lot of sleeping going on anyway. Um, but going back to what I had said, opportunity, once again, I know multiple times they're like, oh, there's, resources and case managers and all these other things, but we never utilize any of it. We had no idea about any of it. Nobody told us anything. I could totally see, and I'm sure it probably exists, but I don't hear about it much. Um, obviously like a women's health, therapist who wants to go down that road. I know doulas and other professionals in that space, but paying somebody who's been there 100 times to come with you to help you navigate the system, to be that patient advocate, to be like, okay, this is what we need and this is what we're going to do. And hey, can we do this? And can we do that? And like, they just have the experience. And again, if you're going to pay $500, $1,000 for that, totally worth it because you're in such a vulnerable state, whether you're the person giving birth or you're the person supporting the person giving birth. You're so vulnerable. You're so powerless. You have no idea where anything is. And I just know that like I can vaguely recall there were certain things that people would tell us like, oh, make sure you ask for this or I just even remember at one point and somebody was like, why did you have your baby with you the entire time? Like, why didn't you send the baby down to the nursery so mom could get an hour of sleep? And I was like, you can do that? Wait a second. That's an option.
And they didn't
Like,
tell you things like that. Yeah.
no, we had no idea. And so all of these things, like when they come and took our boys to get circumcised and blood tests and stuff, are like, we don't know what they're doing. The baby just disappeared. We don't know where he is. We don't know who he's with. We don't know anything. So again, like having, and I would have gladly paid for that. It's not a covered service. It would have been all out of pocket. But like if somebody who wanted to get into that space even did one or two a month, and that was like, $50,000 a year just in that revenue, I think it's rewarding. I think it's enjoyable. Did you guys do the photos in the hospital? Did they have a photographer that came through and took pictures and stuff?
No, I mean, a ton of iPhone content. So
Yeah.
our own.
I wonder if the photographers still do it. Because when we were, I mean, we still had phones back then, not as good as today, but there would always be a photographer who'd float through every room and be like, "Do you want photos?" And then you would do, you'd buy the CD or whatever, and they were great photos. Just all of these little things that I'm thinking about now, remembering back to. I know my wife had an experience with this shoulder pain. It happened with two, I think, of the three births. They claimed it was air that gets into the body cavity and it kind of rises up into the shoulder, and it was a sharp, piercing pain. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help you. There's nothing, like massage doesn't help, and none of these things helped. And they tried Percocet and other meds, but nothing made a dent in it. Again, if somebody would have just told us, hey, it's not uncommon. This is normal. This is what happens. Try this position or whatever. All of those things, I think, would be such a help.
Yeah, there were several examples, several instances just like that, where something was like not said and we found out like a day or two or three later, like, oh, that's possible, or that's a thing, or that's an option. Like, we didn't know. Like the thing that you said about, your two boys staying in your room versus going to the nursery, right?
Right.
And some of the things, like, we would question and then we would get like a direct answer, but then there would be other things where it was like, wow, like like no one said that or whatever. So like, yeah, there's so many things in a hospital stay as part of my observation or my impression. I guess, like you said, unless you have like a personal nurse that's like 24/7 in your room, it's impossible for them to cover every little nuance and situation. There's so many things happening, like blood pressure checks every 4 hours, and maybe blood draws, or they're coming in for an assessment or an evaluation or something like that, and then we're waiting for the results, and are we being discharged or not, and there's so many things that I guess can't be covered. I mean, like, covered meaning reviewed or brought up.
Yeah, I think they're just so used to it. It's like you and I, when we do an evaluation, there's probably a million things we don't even verbalize, but goes through our minds. And because we don't say it, but we've done it 100 times, 1,000 times, the patient sits there and they don't know what to expect. And that's why for me, I started doing this again recently. I want to hear the stories about the food.
Yes, yes.
But I started recording myself in patient evaluations, during patient interactions, looking at what I do, how I behave, the questions I ask. I listen to it back, because it's shocking just how poor, from my perspective, my patient care delivery is, just because so many things go unsaid. I'm thinking it, but I'm not saying it. I'm not verbalizing it. And I can do better, but I want to do better. I think most people, they're just trying to keep their head above water. So tell me about the food.
Yes. Listen, no one goes to a hospital for the food. We all know that, especially in the United States. There were a couple things. One was, we would simply put in a certain order. Like, I don't eat meat, but I eat fish, and my wife eats meat and everything. We would order, let's say my order was like a veggie option, and then, it would be chicken or beef or whatever. So it was like totally incorrect. And like either one of ours would be incorrect, or like both of ours, or like we order. So for me, I'm drinking coffee right now. We've talked about coffee on the show before. We don't really drink hot tea unless we're sick or whatever. The default at this hospital is tea with every meal, unless, like, especially with lunch and dinner. The default is lunch and dinner is tea, hot tea, for every meal, and otherwise you have to request coffee. Well, that took, I don't know, I took 2 of the 4 days to like them to actually send us coffee instead of hot tea, which we would call Tony. We would call the hotel food services person. She would take the order. Also, another person would come in with an iPad and confirm our order. And sometimes it was still incorrect. So here's what I learned with that really simply is, whoever was assembling the tray, executing the tray, putting the things on the tray, was just in default mode or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're, maybe, low rung on the totem pole, whatever you want to call it. And they're just operating like an autopilot and just doing the same old thing. and not looking at the custom orders or the changes or whatever.
Yeah, I'm surprised they don't have an app that allows you to order specifically through your own app.
Yeah, no, there was no app. There was no app.
I'm pretty sure, like, even within a few years, maybe 10 years ago, we had an app at our hospital when one of my in-laws was in the hospital. But tell me about the app they did have, or whatever, the functionality that allowed you to watch baby on a monitor.
Yeah, so that was called Angel. I think it was called. I think I still have it on my phone. Angel Eye Mobile. My wife got some, secure link from the hospital through email. Myself and the whole family, we all logged in with her email address and password or whatever. So we just shared like one user login, and the baby's fine now. But there was, because of the 6 hours of pushing and delivery, the baby went to the NICU for 2 days. Thankfully, baby's fine, but baby was fatigued, tired, lethargy, all that type of stuff. So they wanted to make sure everything was okay. So in the NICU, the parents can go visit, but no one else. Like the mother and father can visit, but none of our parents that came to visit the hospital could even go into the NICU. And there was no nursery, like big glass where you could view into the NICU. So they came to the hospital and they would only be able to see us and not the baby until the baby was discharged. So
Wow.
also with my wife, she was on bed rest because of magnesium infusion, because of the high blood pressure, and they administer magnesium to be the safety net, because if the blood pressure gets too high, someone could have seizures. So they administer magnesium to prevent the breakthrough seizure, the breakthrough blood pressure that would cause a seizure. So she was on bed rest. So that was brutal the first day or two, because I was going down in the NICU solo. Luckily, they had this camera that Tony was asking me about. So we would be able to see, and it was like, like on an arm, and it was like right over the little, cube, so that 24/7, as long as the nurse would turn the camera off if the baby was being cared for, changed diaper, fed, burped, whatever. But otherwise, they would have the camera there recording 24/7. You could see the baby's movement. You could see, their lungs moving and their belly moving for breathing. And that was awesome. I mean, it was great. It was incredible for my wife. And I thought was interesting is that there was no upsell. There was no charge for that. So,
Yeah.
and I don't know, but I doubt insurance pays for that. So that's probably something that the hospital pays for as a value add, that then makes someone like me talk about it in public. And then maybe someone goes to that hospital because of that and other things, but as a nice value add. So that was pretty cool as a feature. And the last thing you want is you have a baby and they're in the NICU. So this certainly gives a little more comfort to the parents, especially if they're not spending 24/7 in the NICU, or you go back upstairs to eat your next lunch or dinner or meal, and then you can go into this camera and view your baby at the same time without being in the NICU. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's what I was thinking. I was like, I wonder what made the decision, who the decision maker was to say, let's pay for this technology, let's bring it into the NICU so that we have this available, even though it's not driving revenue, not increasing income in any way, not really doing anything. And then I would imagine once the first one gets it, then everybody else needs to get it so that they remain competitive as other hospitals. Interesting.
I bet that, I'm trying to think like clinically, right? So if the parents like us are able to see the baby in the NICU, I would assume on average, most of the parents, and especially the mothers, would be a little calmer. They would be less freaked out. And so that would trickle down to the nurses on that floor being like having a little bit better job satisfaction, a little less tension with the patients. Maybe it's better for the nurses and that whole labor and delivery floor. Like it's probably maybe like a culture thing. Like you can't really put a dollar amount to it, but in terms of whatever they spend on the technology, and the hardware is fairly small, little cameras, and probably some monthly service agreement for the actual software, I'm sure it's a drop in the bucket. But yeah, like you said, it doesn't produce any revenue, but it's definitely a value add for the parents, but then also probably for the nurses and the staff that are dealing with and treating that parent, that patient, that family on the front lines.
Yeah, because every time our kids left our room, I was there. You always have that little voice in the back of your head being like, well, what if they confuse the babies? What if they get switched? I was with my kids. They go to get a blood draw, they go to get whatever. Anytime I could be, I was there. They were washing them, bathing them. I was there for all of it. And I'm pretty low key, hopefully, but I'm sure there are some parents that aren't. And so the nurses and the staff having to deal with not just the baby, but also the parent of the baby helicoptering around. It's well worth a technology investment like that.
Absolutely. All
So,
right. Now the menu, real quick. The menu.
yeah.
That okay, we got a pamphlet. We go in this private room, private suite, and there's like a couple page, large 9 by 11 menu. And on the inside of it says available always menu. Across the top, the title in bold letters, available always menu. So you got your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But if it's 11 or if it's 2:30, I eat a lot, Tony. I work out a lot. I eat a lot, and so I want some I want some food in between meals. So
Yeah.
it's 2:30. I call the food service number up, and I'm looking at the available always menu, and I'm like, oh, there's a veggie noodle bowl. That's interesting. Hey, there's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like that looks good. Like let's see. Let me call them up. So I try to, get a veggie noodle bowl sent to the room, to the suite, and no dice. They said, oh, well, like first they were kind of confused. And I'm like, no, I'm not talking about the next meal. I'm not talking about
Yeah.
dinner. I don't want a noodle bowl for dinner. What's my dinner? The tilapia? Keep that. I want the tilapia for dinner. But it's 2:30. The dinner's coming at 5 or 5:30 or whatever. I would like a noodle bowl now. Here's the room number or whatever. And they're like, no, you could like switch the noodle bowl for your dinner. I'm like, I'm not looking respectfully. I'm not looking for
Yeah.
a substitution. I'm reading this menu. I'm in this private suite, this room number K through 06. And it says, I'm reading it and let me just reconfirm. Let me read it. I wasn't trying to be like an internet Karen, right?
Yeah.
Available always menu. So so this is not available. What about a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? You guys probably have dozens of those made, right? No, that can't be sent to the room either. Really? But this menu says, I'm just reading what the menu says, available always menu. So it turns out this then the next day or two, the director, the whatever, because we had multiple issues. Remember, we talked about food being delivered incorrectly.
Yeah.
Hot teas instead of black coffees, and then this thing with available always menu. And I never said, Tony, hey, I'm paying $525 a night,
Right.
and I'm better than the other person that's in the shared room that's not paying out of pocket. I never went that route. I never made that, connotation or anything. I just said like, hey, I'm in this room. This is what we're looking for. It's this time. This menu says available always. So then the next day or two, the director of food services comes in, and we have a nice long talk. She brought like a big canister of like one of those like big gallon coffees to try to make up for the missed coffees, whatever. Like one of those like Dunkin' Donut things that
Yeah.
party. So I said to her like, so I tried to order food at like 11 and like 2 and like this menu says available always menu. That it kind of sounds like hotel room service. Like, and I'm not trying to say like I know I'm not in a hotel. I know we're in a hospital. I'm just reading off the menu. And she tried to give some example. And I said, well, respectfully, I think the wording on this menu is misleading.
Right.
I'm not upset, but it's misleading. And it should probably say something like substitution, food substitution offers or, breakfast, lunch, dinner substitution offers. It should not say available always menu. I could go on and on about it, but I didn't get upset or mad. We did have external food come in. We're in Brooklyn, like, arguably some of the greatest food around. We did have some external food come in from our family members. So that bridged the gap and that was incredible. Any thoughts or feedback on this?
Well, when you started saying it, that was the first thing that I was thinking. I was like, is he misinterpreting what they're trying to say? And again, so many times I see this happening between like the consumer and the provider. It's like the provider's saying words And the consumer is hearing those words in a way that's not intended for them to be heard. But then the other thing I just keep thinking about is, man, it seems like you could have a full-time business on just food delivery, just for this one hospital, just for people in labor and delivery, where again, it's like you understand those pain points, you cater to those pain points. I wonder, I'm trying to remember back when we were there, I think the patient gets a meal, and I want to say the guest gets a meal, and that's kind of included in the package, but
Yep.
additional meals were not included. So again, if I know that there's a captive audience, I know that they want certain things, and there's people coming in and out, I would just build a full-time business delivering specialty food to those individuals in that hospital. Gosh, there's just so many opportunities in all of this, just addressing each of these individual pain points. The problem is you're done. You're not going back. This will all dissipate out into the ether. Nobody's going to capitalize on this, and things will just continue to operate as they always have.
I got to kick it back to you. So when you read a menu, if you're at a hotel, or specifically if you were at a hospital, let's say you were visiting a family member, God forbid, and it says available always menu, no other explanation other than just food items listed.
Right.
How do you perceive that? Like,
Yeah, I would think I could order any of those things anytime, day or night. But I could also understand they're saying you can substitute your structured scheduled meals. It's like Henry Ford, you can have any color you want as long as it's black. They're saying you can substitute these items. They're always available for these specific meals, not whenever you want them, just instead of the meal that would have been on the menu.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, what else? What else did I put in the Google Doc? Food, the food delivery, things falling through the gap, following up with
Those are all the main ones, but I want to hear, so how'd you get baby home? Like, what was that like? Did you drive? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so when we drove home, we already had the car seat hooked up, like the base of the car seat. That was the slowest driving I've done in Brooklyn ever, by the way. So yeah, we already had the whole car seat hooked up. I thought that also, I heard that like nurses or someone at the hospital would have to watch you. I thought it was watch you hook up the car seat in the car and make sure it was
Oh,
actually stable. That didn't happen. They made sure that the baby was just clipped in the seat in the hospital, but then we walked out with the baby in the car seat ourselves. I thought the nurse was doing like roadside, curbside check of the car seat. So again, there's something else. Even though I'm a healthcare provider, I had some assumption or something, and I thought they were doing that. It turns out they're like, yeah, all right, it's clipped in. He's safe. He's stable. He's locked in. He's clipped in. He's good. You guys are good to go. And I was like, oh, I thought you were do like a curbside assessment or whatever of like the base, like the actual base that is clipped into the back seat, and it's positioned properly, baby facing rear because of the airbags and that whole thing.
Yep.
Nope, there's no assessment there at all.
Yeah, it's pretty much just kick you out the door. Once you get out the door, you're done. You're not a liability anymore, which again, we've talked about like post-surgical, the therapist meeting the patient at discharge, being involved in getting the patient, comfortable in the car and getting the patient home after a knee replacement or something like that. But this is the same exact thing. So if you had that concierge experience where you could have your therapist there for that, make sure the car seat base is in correctly, make sure everything is secure, make sure baby is comfortable. Even potentially, I want to say my wife rode in the back when we were driving home. I don't even remember, but you're so freaked out as a new patient. You're like, am I turning too sharp? Am I stopping too quick? Am I all of that stuff. And it's just the weirdest experience that you go to the hospital, you've been alive for however many years you've been alive without a child, and then you're discharged with a child. And there's just no in between. But that's awesome. And you guys are set up at home, you're comfortable, things are going good now.
Things are great. We're doing the feeding every 3 hours, all the normal stuff. Took a week off from any calls and things like that, but now this is the first one back, so it's great to be back. But yeah, the home stuff, like we had everything else set up. So like the changing table, the bassinet, like we had all these things already prepared and set up. Things are pretty comfortable. We have my wife's family here to support us, which is incredible. Um, yeah,
How
no.
did you guys know what to buy, what not to buy, what was going to be like vitally important piece of equipment?
My wife built the whole registry. She had been, doing research on items and checklists and products and things for, for months. Um, so we had a bunch of the help with our friends and family for the registry type items, and those were the items that I guess we probably opened and assessed first, the things that were going to be like day one needed, and then the things that are 6 months down the line, like maybe they're not even opened yet or they're like in the garage or something. So yeah, she did a ton of work there around even looking at reviews and comparing products, and we looked at YouTube reviews on like the car seat and everything, like all the normal stuff, no surprises there, like checklists online, blogs online, all the stuff that you talk about, all the stuff that that you cover as well.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. So I think all of this leads into this idea, and it's interesting because I had a conversation with the therapist last night. This therapist is down Isle Morada, so down by the Keys, South Florida.
Nice.
And it's a sleepy town. I used to go down there to go fishing. We'd bring the boat down, but it's kind of a famous fishing resort, but there's not a whole lot else going on there. And this therapist was talking about her Medicare caseload and other stuff going on. And she's looking to monetize her time in other ways, kind of bigger return on her investment. And I'm like, well, are you involved in fishing? Are you involved in any of these things? And she's like, well, a little bit. I said, you know what would be perfect? And I'm familiar with the area, creating this experience, a recovery experience for people who love fishing, who maybe have Parkinson's, who aren't safe to get on a boat anymore. But if you, the therapist, coordinated all of these things, you coordinate the boat, the charter, the captain, the gear, you coordinate the Airbnb, you coordinate a 3-day experience, a 7-day experience, and you market it to individuals who love fishing but aren't capable of fishing by themselves anymore. And you actually go on the boat, and it's not treatment. You're using your clinical expertise to deliver an experience that this person would gladly pay $5, $10, $20,000 for. And I'm like, you take that then a step further and you say, okay, well, maybe not just fishing. Well, what about somebody who has a knee replacement, who has a spouse who maybe isn't capable or isn't interested in caring for them, and they want to recover somewhere beautiful and warm and nice, and they want to recover next to the beach. And so you create this knee replacement 3-week recovery package, Airbnb and transportation and all of this stuff. These are experiences that I think we are uniquely suited to handle and to manage. And it goes into childbirth. It goes into all of these other areas of life. We know people who are doing it on a very small and very quiet program, but I think we need to kind of get more people thinking in this way. That I've talked about. We know a couple therapists that are in Georgia. They love golf. They work with golf, but I think most therapists think, I'm going to do golf performance. I'm going to help improve your ability to hit the ball farther and do these things. That's fine. There's 1,000, TPI certified golf professionals. I'm like, why not instead focus on people with Parkinson's, focus on people who have had strokes, focus on people who have had an amputation, put a golfing experience together where you actually go golf with them, but you also help them navigate the course, navigate the cart, navigate the hardware. You put everything, eliminate the friction so that they can get back to doing these things, and you do it with them and you enjoy it. And I really believe people will pay multiple thousands of dollars for that experience. But it ties right into what you did, because you're bringing peace of mind, you're bringing clarity, you're bringing your own clinical experience. You know what to say, you know who to say it to. I think that is, potentially a business model that is underutilized.
Yeah. So that example of the Parkinson's golf experience.
Yeah.
Anyone that's watching or listening to this, if you have that on your website, if that's a specific page on your website, this would be my tip, and Tony might have something similar. If that was on your website, specific page for the Parkinson's golf experience, You just don't use words. I mean, you can tweak it however, you would suggest, but I would say you don't have the word rehab, rehabilitation, or physical therapy on it. More folks will pay out of pocket for that, or they will read it, they'll call you, and they'll just assume you might have a price there listed. Tony might say you should have your price listed. You could test it. Yes, it's listed. No, it's not listed. You could test that. More people will call you and contact you and already assume and know that it's something out of pocket, because it doesn't sound like something like rehab, physical therapy, medically necessary, covered under insurance, right? So if you write it in the exact same way that you just outlined, like, you get this, you get this, you get this, the bullet points, Airbnb and the round of golf and transport or whatever, folks will call you and contact you and inquire about it. And you'll have less of the insurance question, less of the cost friction, because of the way you're describing it. And it is something that is certainly a value add to a lot of patients and clients out there, but they'll just understand like it's different than strict rehab or physical therapy, where they're more likely to say, do you take my insurance, or does Medicare cover this, or whatever. You just literally offer it on your website as its own page and describe it the way Tony just did. And you'll have less friction of patients asking about cost and insurance and all that.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a travel agent that's doing it. It could be, anybody's doing it. It just so happens to be that you're also a physical therapist. That's like a secondary benefit. It reminds me when I used to spend more time in the clinic and I'd be working with a patient. You might have experienced this. So I'm working with the patient. Now, this is a traditional physical therapy situation. And I mentioned to the patient, oh, yeah, I'm certified personal trainer. They're like, oh, what? You're a personal trainer? And like my status just jumped 5 levels, because in their mind, a personal trainer now is working with me, not just a physical therapist. But with any of these things, I would not call it physical therapy, because it's not. It's this golfing experience. It's a recovery experience. It's, something that they pay for. Now, I was trying to remember, we know that people will go overseas to get surgeries. Is there a name for that? It's like medical tourism, but it seemed like there was some sort of catchy name that I just couldn't remember. Does anything come to mind for you?
Medical tourism is, I guess, the general term.
Yeah.
There might be a newer, I can't recall if there's something else.
All right, we got to come up with a name. Like Jimmy says, you got to name it. If you name it, it becomes something. I know around here, Ohio, Midwest, agro-tourism is a big thing. Like all of the local farms have turned into these like multiple $1 million businesses where they don't even do farming anymore. They'll plant corn just so they still look like a farm, but they will charge $17 to $22 a kid for kids to come out to their property and just see the goats and walk around and do, farm things for a birthday party. And it's just, I've talked to the farm owners, because these are families that have been in the town for, multiple generations. And they're doing upwards of $10 million, where the farm used to barely break a profit, a couple $100,000 at best. They're doing millions of dollars just because now they're not farming, but they call it agro-tourism. And these kids are just booking parties like crazy on the farming property. They also do like weddings and other things. I even wonder something like that, like how could a PT, OT, SLP create an experience, an environment where there is a rehabilitation component, there is a personal improvement component, but you're making an event out of it, like a party, a celebration, or something like that, but it's all curated by a therapist. So whether it be, for individuals that have certain impairments or physical conditions or anything, I would love to see clinics start to transform into higher profit margin businesses serving a different population.
And you simply have to name it. Like you said, you mentioned it. Jimmy's mentioned it on the show before and I think Jimmy screen shared my website a little while ago. So on our Parkinson's page, it's the Parkinson's breakthrough program. And if it just said like Parkinson's rehab, in-home Parkinson's physical therapy, whatever, we would get, X amount of people asking like, oh, do you take my insurance or whatever? But because it says the Parkinson's breakthrough program, we have less people asking about, is it covered, or do you take my insurance? And or we have more people calling and basically saying on the front end of the answering service, speaking to someone, like going through our script, they're saying like, well, is this covered by my insurance? And if not, like, how much is it? Like, by just having the title and it's something different and unique, more consumers will read it, will see it, and kind of expect like, oh, this sounds like something outside of a covered benefit, some insurance offering or whatever. And it's already cueing them to kind of preparing them that it is something out of pocket. And then it's just like, relaying like how much, like we don't list prices on our website, but some other therapists do. So then it's the question of like, well, how much is it? And then they can kind of weigh the cost benefit of like, is this something I want to take on and do, or what does it entail for that cost or whatever. But the title, you have to name it something specific. It's something that's, I don't think it's done that well. And that you were saying like more practices need to be doing that. Yeah, the only way to offer some more of these out-of-pocket experiences, one of the simplest ways is you name it something specific, like an experience or program or whatever, and it just doesn't, it sounds less like a insurance cover benefit.
Well, we see it, it's funny you're saying this, and now it's taking me back like a decade. When we would, and we still use referral pads, but when we would generate new referral pads, we would create names for the programs. So we would have a rotator cuff recovery program. We would have a quick treat, which would be a 20-minute session during lunchtime so that people who are still working could come in, get a 20-minute session and get out. We would probably name like 5 or 6 condition specific programs so that it did have some,
or what?
Yeah, checkbox, rotator cuff repair. We had a name for that program. The surgeon would just check it and send the referral over to us. But every one of them had a name. I totally forgot about that. The other thing that I was thinking about, and I want to talk about AI documentation before we wrap up this morning, but shoot, I was thinking the equipment side of things is just so appealing to me. Not that I want to create an equipment company, because we see what happens. You create an amazing piece of equipment, it gets knocked off by China, and it sells for a fraction of the cost. But just what we've seen with influencers moving into the product space. You've got the Logan Paul going in with Prime. You've got Mr. Beast going in with Feastables. You've got all of these high profile influencers. Have you ever thought like Dave Kittle, partnering with any kind of equipment company to co-brand, co-market, and maybe you own a piece of that equity, a specific product, rehab product that you particularly like?
I haven't. We use this StimPod device for pulse radio frequency, and it is it's so effective. Like, I know you also talk about, maybe placebo and different things like that, and who knows, but we use it for orthopedic, aches and pains, but we also use it for nerve pain and neurological conditions, chronic pain, sciatica, carpal tunnel, whatever. They've approached me to, like I had one of their providers, the chiropractor, on my show, and we did an episode just totally for free. They didn't pay for it or anything, but they want me to kind of like, offer the devices and, get a commission or whatever. And I would certainly be more inclined if there was some, some equity in it, as opposed to just being like some affiliate. I'm not really a fan of being some type of like product affiliate. But that is the physical device that we use that I like the best, that I like the most, that I see the best results with, and patients love it and, experience positive results. So that's something that I would certainly put my name behind.
Have you had any patients purchase their own?
Well, close, but no. I mean, now it's $5,000. When I bought 2. So myself and one of my therapists, and it was like I had some provider discount, whatever they wanted to call it. So they price anchored me higher, and then it was still like 2,300 or something. But now if you go on their website, it's pretty much $5,000 right now. So, yeah.
You would probably know better than me. Mostly chiropractors. They have Facebook offers. It's a $47 offer. It's for peripheral neuropathy. It's some sort of red light device. I had a patient who came to me. I had treated him multiple times over multiple years. And, he's just a classic spinal stenosis, peripheral neuropathy, multiple complexities and comorbidities, but he's high functioning. He still works as an HVAC guy. He can't feel anything below the knee. I mean, I don't know how he functions, but he does. And so he saw the ad, $47. I got to do it. This is driving me crazy. The neuropathy. He goes. He gets the, whole campaign and the marketing and gets convinced that this is the device he needs to buy. And I want to say he's not, the owner of the HVAC company, but he spent $8,000. He bought the red light therapy unit and he's supposed to be using it at home. And I had seen him like 6 months after. So there was no improvement, no functional benefit. The money was gone, never coming back. But even somebody like that, like they will put the money into that product. I recently shared the post about buying a $3,000 treadmill is a much easier sell than buying a $3,000 physical therapy plan of care. But that being said, again, I really think, have you started making any content, any video content of you or any of your people using that device that you like?
I have one piece of content. It's moving in that direction, Tony.
How often do you use it?
Well, I mean, right now with, maternity leave or whatever, I'm only treating one patient,
Okay.
3 times a week. So I'm using it with him. He's got Parkinson's. We use it on his, his upper extremity. How often? I mean, I'll probably use it with maybe 25 to 50% of my patients. But again, I'm trying to get out of patient care and decrease my load. But in general, it's super handy. And also, so like the device is basically, it's like at the end of the cord, at the end of the wire, it's like a pen.
Right.
You can also go here in like the earlobe for vagus nerve stimulation, which, there's a whole thing of like parasympathetic, sympathetic, parasympathetic, and it helps to, I mean, I felt it. I don't know. Like, again, I know you're big on placebo effect. I don't know. Maybe it's there. Maybe it's not. But I felt it when I've done vagus nerve stimulation for 10 minutes with this device. And afterwards, I'm like, wow, I feel like a little like calmer, or I don't know. I feel like I feel a little better or whatever. So we'll use it for our patients that have, MS, Parkinson's, chronic pain, headaches, migraines, neck pain. Like it's so, multi-purpose. So using it more and more, and I've been using it for probably about 2 years. So, like, and the chiropractor reached out to me on LinkedIn cold. You know how cold messages are on LinkedIn, usually terrible. I ignored them. I thought it was, a sham. He offered to send me a test trial device for 2 weeks for no cost without my credit card. And I was like, well, that's pretty bold. That's an irresistible offer. So I tried it. Patients started to feel positive effects from it right away. And so we've used it ever since.
Nice. Well, I had said AI, we're going to have to push that to Thursday. I think this is a good spot to wrap up with. In honor of Jimmy, let's do a parting shot. What is your parting shot?
Yeah, parting shot. Going back to the $525 a night private suite hotel stay. I didn't do it because I didn't do it so I could come on here and act like, I'm some baller or whatever to do it. I literally, privacy and comfort and sleep are that important to me and my wife. And that's just a reminder that, so there's only 7 of those private rooms, and there's, I don't know, dozens and dozens of like the shared rooms, right? So it's not for everyone. And that is a reminder to me that even our service, it's premium, it's out of pocket, and it's something that it's not for everyone. And I am my own customer, consumer, patient, right? And that's why I think I've been fairly successful, because I know my ideal patient, client, consumer. And that's kind of like, it wouldn't make sense if I was someone who would never pay out of pocket for anything, but then I try to charge everyone out of pocket for my physical therapy services. So it's kind of like you're eating your own dog food in a way.
Yeah, and that's a great parting shot for me too. I remember going to one of my first marketing seminars decades ago, and the presenter was like, "You are not your target demographic. You are not your patient." And it was true, because I was in my 20s or 30s. I had no orthopedic issues. I had no money. So we went through all of this, and it's like, you cannot sell to yourself at that stage in life. Now, fast forward, I'm 49. I've got other priorities. I've got a little bit of money in the bank. Now I can spend the money, and I will spend the money on what I value. I am my target consumer. I do want to serve people who are just like me, and so that switches at some point. For me, it's today, it's now. But the better you understand that consumer, the better you understand the priorities and the pain points, the better you can serve them, and the better that your business will do. So let's shoot for Thursday, 8:30 a.m. We'll see if Jimmy's back with us or not. But Dave, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, we'll see ya.
Hey, it's Dave Kittle. Are you a healthcare business owner or physical therapy practice owner who is looking to figure out your succession plan or exit strategy? We might be able to help. And in fact, we may be interested in acquiring your practice. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. Shoot me an email at dave@conciergepainrelief.com. That's DAVE at CONCIERGE painrelief.com. Or you can call me at any time, 646-781-8884.